In the crowded heart of Manila, a young boy named Rico stood beneath the fading glow of a streetlight, clutching a small, battered microphone connected to a portable speaker. His voice echoed through the marketplace, soft at first, then stronger with each word. He sang Elvis Presley songs, old classics like "Can't Help Falling in Love" and "Love Me Tender," with a tone that carried both innocence and pain. His clothes were worn, his shoes scuffed, but when he sang, none of that mattered. People would stop in their tracks to listen. Some smiled, others dropped coins into the small tin box beside him. A few even recorded him on their phones, amazed that such a young boy could sing with the depth of an old soul. Rico wasn't just performing for attention or applause, he was singing for his sick mother waiting in a small wooden house at the edge of the city. Every peso he earned went toward her medicine, her food, and the tiny bit of hope they shared each night, that one day, their lives would change. Rico's mother, Elena, used to be a singer herself. She taught him everything about music, the rhythm, the emotion, the importance of feeling every word. When she grew ill, Rico promised her he would keep singing, even when it hurt. "Music will feed our hearts," she told him, "and maybe, one day, it will feed our lives too." That thought stayed in Rico's mind every night as he practiced Elvis songs on a broken phone that barely worked. He didn't have instruments, just his voice, but that was enough. He believed that if he sang with truth, people would listen. And one evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, that belief began to come true. A tourist couple from Ireland stopped to listen to him sing, "Can't Help Falling in Love." The man recorded the performance on his phone while the woman wiped away tears. "You sound just like Elvis," she told him, and Rico smiled shyly, clutching his small photo of his mother. He didn't know it yet, but that video would travel across the world in the coming days. Within a week, Rico's life changed in ways he never imagined. The video went viral on social media, gathering millions of views. People from around the world commented about the little Filipino boy with the golden voice. News sites began calling him the young Elvis of Manila. His story touched hearts, how a poor boy sang to help his sick mother, how he smiled even in hardship, how every note he sang carried pure emotion. Soon, TV networks in the Philippines tried to find him for interviews, but Rico kept singing on the same corner, unaware of the storm of love forming online. It wasn't until a man from Ireland contacted him that he realized something incredible was happening. The man was a producer for Ireland's Got Talent. He had watched the video and said, "Rico, the world needs to hear you sing on a real stage. We want you to audition." Rico couldn't believe it. Ireland felt like another universe to him. How could a poor boy from Manila go that far? But when he told his mother, she smiled weakly and said, "You must go, my son. You were born to sing, not just for me, but for the world." Her words filled his heart with courage. They borrowed money for his passport, and a local charity helped cover the flight. Before he left, his mother handed him a small Elvis badge she had kept for years. "This will keep you safe," she whispered. On the day of his flight, Rico hugged her tightly, tears in both their eyes. "I'll sing for you, Mama," he promised. "I'll make you proud." He walked away from their tiny home with a suitcase, his microphone, and his dreams. On the plane to Ireland, Rico looked out the window, watching the clouds drift below him. Everything felt surreal, the people, the lights, the thought of singing in front of real judges and an audience. He touched the Elvis badge pinned to his shirt and whispered a quiet prayer. Far below, the streets of Manila faded from view, but his mother's voice echoed in his mind like a song. "Never stop believing, my son. Your music will carry you where you belong." And somewhere across the ocean, destiny waited for him, bright, unexpected, and golden. The day Rico stepped onto the stage of Ireland's Got Talent, his hands were trembling. The studio lights were brighter than anything he had ever seen, and the audience stretched out before him like a sea of faces. He could feel his heart pounding so loudly he thought everyone could hear it. He clutched the small Elvis badge pinned to his jacket, whispering a silent prayer for strength. When his name was announced, the crowd murmured curiously. A small boy from the Philippines, standing alone with a microphone, thousands of miles away from home. The judges exchanged uncertain looks, not knowing what to expect. Then the music began. The familiar opening chords of "Suspicious Minds" filled the air, and Rico closed his eyes, letting the rhythm take over. The moment he started singing, the entire room fell silent. His voice carried a soulfulness that seemed impossible for someone his age. Deep, powerful, and full of emotion, it transported everyone straight into the golden era of Elvis Presley. The judges leaned forward, captivated. Simon Cowell, sitting in as a guest judge, raised his eyebrows in surprise. As Rico sang the chorus, his confidence grew. He began to move slightly with the rhythm, just like Elvis used to. The crowd erupted into applause halfway through the song, but Rico didn't stop. He sang with all his heart, thinking only of his mother back home. When the final note faded, there was a pause, a heartbeat of silence, and then the audience exploded into cheers and whistles. Everyone stood up, clapping and shouting his name. Rico's eyes filled with tears as he looked at the four judges smiling back at him. Simon leaned into the microphone and said softly, "That was pure heart. You're one of those rare voices that remind us why we love music." The other judges agreed, giving him 4 yeses without hesitation. Rico covered his face, overwhelmed, as the host ran on stage to hug him. It was a moment of magic, a young boy from the streets of Manila winning over an entire nation with nothing but his voice. When he walked backstage, crew members and contestants congratulated him, some crying, some clapping. Rico felt like he was dreaming. He called his mother that night and told her everything. She was weak but happy, whispering proudly, "I knew you could do it, my son. Keep singing. The world is listening." Weeks later came the semifinals. The studio was packed, and anticipation buzzed in the air. Rico knew this performance would be the most important of his life. He chose to sing, "Can't Help Falling in Love," the same song he sang in the streets of Manila, the song that started it all. As the first soft notes played, Rico stood completely still, eyes glistening under the lights. He sang every word as if it were a prayer. The audience listened in complete silence, many holding their breath. His voice wavered with emotion, pure and raw. When the camera cut to Simon, tears shimmered in his eyes. He wasn't the only one, several people in the front row were crying. As the song came to its end, Rico took a deep breath and held the final note, his voice trembling with feeling. The silence afterward was powerful. Then Simon Cowell stood up, his eyes glistening, and slammed the golden buzzer. The studio erupted as golden confetti burst into the air, raining down on Rico like sunlight. The boy fell to his knees, covering his face as tears streamed down. The judges stood, clapping, and the host rushed over to comfort him. Simon walked up to the stage and placed his hand on Rico's shoulder. "That," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "was one of the most beautiful performances I've ever seen. You're not just singing Elvis, you're carrying his spirit." The crowd chanted Rico's name again and again, their voices filling the studio with warmth and pride. That night, the internet exploded with the clip of his golden buzzer performance. Within hours, it was trending worldwide. Millions of people watched the small Filipino boy make Simon Cowell cry. Rico's story became a symbol of hope, proof that talent and heart could rise from anywhere. As he sat alone in his dressing room, still holding a handful of golden confetti, he thought about his mother. "I did it, Mama," he whispered. "You said my music would carry me, and it did." Somewhere across the ocean, under the same sky, he knew she was smiling. The night of the grand finale arrived, and Rico stood backstage with his hands shaking. The arena was packed with thousands of people, and millions more were watching from home. The boy who once sang on the streets of Manila was now moments away from performing on one of the biggest stages in the world. He could feel the weight of it all pressing on his chest, the lights, the noise, the expectation. But above everything, he felt the presence of his mother. He carried her photo in his pocket, the edges worn from his constant touch. When his name was announced, he stepped forward, head held high, trying to keep the tears from falling before the first note even began. For his final performance, Rico had chosen, "If I Can Dream," one of Elvis Presley's most powerful songs. The music started slowly, and the lights dimmed, leaving only a soft spotlight on his small frame. The first lines came out tender, almost like a whisper. His voice was filled with longing, hope, and something deeper, grief. Every lyric felt like a message from his heart to the world, to his mother, to everyone who had ever believed in dreams. As the song built in strength, Rico lifted his arms, singing with everything inside him. The audience watched in awe as his voice soared through the theater, pure and aching. Halfway through the performance, something in the air shifted. The crowd could feel his pain and his love. Simon Cowell closed his eyes, visibly moved, and one of the judges wiped away a tear. Rico sang the final words, "While I can dream, please let my dream come true," and the music faded. The room went silent for a few seconds, the kind of silence that comes only after something extraordinary. Then, suddenly, the audience rose to their feet. A thunderous applause filled the space, mixed with cheers and tears. Rico smiled through his tears and bowed deeply. He had given everything he had. Moments later, just before the results were to be announced, Rico's manager approached him backstage with a grave expression. Rico's heart dropped before he even heard the words. His mother had passed away peacefully in her sleep, only hours before the show. The world around him seemed to freeze. He clutched her photo to his chest, unable to breathe. The pain was unbearable, yet in that moment, he remembered her final words, "Sing for me, my son. Always sing." When he walked back on stage for the final announcement, he told the audience, "My mom is watching me from heaven tonight." The crowd fell silent, and even Simon looked down, trying to compose himself. Rico didn't win first place that night, but when the host announced the results, it didn't matter. As confetti fell for the winner, Simon Cowell stood, walked over to Rico, and hugged him tightly. "You've already won something greater," Simon whispered. "You've won the world's heart." The audience cheered louder for Rico than for the actual winner. Cameras captured the moment, the boy who sang from the soul, who turned pain into beauty, standing strong in front of the world. It became one of the most emotional endings in the show's history. Months passed, and Rico's life changed forever. He returned to the Philippines as a hero. Reporters, fans, and even government officials welcomed him at the airport. But Rico didn't chase fame, he wanted to honor his mother's memory. He used his prize money and donations from fans to open a small music school for underprivileged children. "No child with talent should have to sing for coins," he said in an interview. His story continued to inspire millions. He was invited to perform around the world, in London, New York, and Las Vegas, where audiences cried listening to his songs. One evening, during his first major concert, Rico stood before a massive crowd, wearing a white suit just like Elvis. Behind him, a giant screen displayed a photo of his mother smiling beside a younger version of him. He sang, "Love Me Tender," his voice soft and filled with emotion. Thousands of people in the audience held up their phones, their lights flickering like stars. When he finished, he looked up and whispered, "I did it, Mama. I kept my promise." The crowd erupted in applause, chanting his name. Rico smiled through his tears, knowing his journey was only beginning. From the streets of Manila to the world stage, he had proven that dreams don't belong to the rich or the lucky, they belong to those who believe, even when the world doesn't.